This week, another cancellation. I have a face for radio, but I'm not that ugly, guys. Like, come on, why are you canceling on me? Instead, in the leadership and communication segment, CISOs struggling to balance security, business objectives. Signs your organization's culture is hurting your cybersecurity. Servant leadership, putting trust at the center, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Imagine a world where every threat, ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits is stopped before it can even begin. ThreatLocker makes that world a reality with a zero-trust approach to cybersecurity. By giving you granular control on every executable that can happen in your environment, ThreatLocker protects your business around the clock. No more guessing, no more gaps. Just rock-solid protection that keeps your operations running smoothly and your data secure. Discover how ThreatLocker's least privilege approach can safeguard your organization against known and unknown threats. Take the first step towards total peace of mind. Visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker today. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 384, recorded February 24th, 2025. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Joining me for this new segment now are my co-hosts. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque.
Matt, you are not ugly, my friend. It's not your fault. I promise. I promise.
Not in the classic sense.
No,
Right.
Well, leave it to Ben. Leave it to Ben. Well, you want to know what, Matt? Hey, listen, it might not be, we might not be in the NFL season, but it's always the NFL season in the off season, right? We're looking at draft. We're looking at free agency. Now's the chess match. Here we go.
Yeah. With the draft coming, there's going to be all kinds of moves. It's kind of interesting to see who's going to do what. So we'll just wait. We'll wait till it all unfolds. I think it's in a couple of weeks. Or no.
Yep.
Yeah, a few weeks.
I think it is.
Yeah, a few weeks. Also joining me for this interview segment, Mr. Ben Carr. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, Matt, happy to be here. Decided not to just ghost you at the last minute and
Thank
actually
you.
show up for the session with you and Jason. But getting a little warmer here. Hopefully the cold weather's behind us, and maybe it was the cold weather was scaring everybody off. So maybe we'll get some consistency moving forward.
I know a lot of people are sick, so somebody could have gotten sick. I understand. It's weird because when you do a prep call, you just don't think they're usually going to come. Anyway, something happened. Anyways, and it was a good one. So we'll try to get them back on because it is around education and some stuff that's near and dear to Jason's heart. So I think we were both looking forward to this.
Absolutely looking forward to it.
Yeah. One quick announcement. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on their RSA Conference 2025 full conference pass. RSA Conference will take place April 28th to May 1st in San Francisco and on demand. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC25 and use the code 5U5SecWeekly. I'm registered. I'm going to be there. We hope to see you there. All right, guys, let's get into the articles. Luckily I pulled one extra article and then I inserted one more to give us enough to cover on a shorter day, but one long segment. First article, Gartner report: CISOs struggling to balance security business objectives. No, really?
Yeah.
I'm glad they finally listened to the show.
Surprise, 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 right? Yeah, I mean, we obviously know this. I mean, the article itself, obviously some good modern statistics in there, letting us know everything that we've been talking about for years on the show. But it's still a situation where it's dire, right? I mean, CISOs are not aligning to the executives in the business strategy. Coming out of this, it makes me question whether or not some CISOs even know what the business goals from the board or the CEO are. I mean, look at some of the statistics in here. I mean, it doesn't sound like the majority of them are even aligned with the business goals. So that means they don't have a seat at the table.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, even when you look at the statistics, like the first statistic they call up, 35% were confident they could secure data assets. I question that.
Yeah.
That's only 1 in 3, but that
Right.
seems ridiculously high compared to the reality when you actually talk to people, right? We've talked about it over and over. The most fundamental thing is knowing what you have to be able to secure it. I don't even think people really know what they have from a data asset side. And then when they can't secure the business, that's because there isn't a conversation happening between the business and security to fundamentally create a good pathway, a road forward for them to operate together. It's divergent paths most frequently.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I mean, with these type of statistics, I always give it, a minus grade on these, because the majority of ego is going to get in the way, and most people are going to be like, I got this. Yeah, I got this. Right. So, I take these statistics with a grain of salt, and I always err on the side of less positive than more positive in the numbers, unfortunately.
Yeah. And when you interview a group of people, especially like on a C-level group, right, like CISOs, we know that the demographic there is all over the board, right? You've got people who are really real CISOs. You've got people who have a title and name only. You've got people who just started the job, and it's 2 guys in a very small shop. Like, knowing actually where you are on your journey and what you have, really have to question it. Some of these statistics, like, what is the source that you're referencing and what its validity?
100%. And to your point, Ben, just to bring up one more topic, Matt, because you hit on the data assets and inventory and knowing what you have piece, Ben. Just the conversations lately, let's call it within the last 3-4 months, about integrating AI into the business has proven to me that the majority of the organizations do not understand their data estate, nor do they have their data estate classified or inventoried. Because the first question my team will ask is, before we bring you into AI, let's take a look at your security posture when it comes to your data estate, your inventory of data, your data classification, your risk appetite when it comes to that data. And they stare like, what? Because they haven't done it. They haven't done it. And they're not thinking about the ramifications of the amount of data that gets indexed with AI engines. They're not thinking about that. So all that hard work they should have been doing a long time ago and never did, now it's starting to hit the fan, because their board of directors says, all right, when are you going to integrate AI into the business so we can get more operational efficiencies? Ready, set, go. And they're not ready.
And so I think AI is one of those areas. AI is one of those areas where we're just going to move. Like, we don't care. Like, there are some things when I think security does get a good seat at the table and you can have a discussion about something. But I think people view AI, like many other business initiatives, of, hey, if we're not first on board here, we're going to get caught way behind. And as a result, the business is going to suffer. And so, damn security, we're moving forward. Damn a lot of things. It's not just security, but, damn security, we're going to move forward and do what we want to do because that's our competitive edge. And then they're going to be saddled with the outcome of that decision.
100%. And that's what I was going to say, Ben. There's 2 options. They're either going to have a longer pathway to it, which is going to really piss off the board of directors.
Yeah.
Right? Or guess what? They're going to shift into 5th gear and say, we'll worry about the risk later.
Mm-hmm. So it's ready, go, set. Because nobody's getting set, by the way.
Ready, fire, aim, more like that.
Yeah, exactly. But I wonder if this disconnect is something we've talked about a lot on this show, and that is about the alignment of the security leadership role in the organization, right? If you're not working as a true C-suite executive with presence into the board, you're not going to be aligned on business objectives. And therefore, sometimes you don't even know this stuff is happening at the board level and why they're so far disconnected. I still think this is part of the root. We talk about this a lot on the show. 48% of the Fortune 500 don't have a named CISO. Well, no wonder there's no alignment between security and business objectives. They don't have a seat at the table.
Well, I mean, in this article, they talk about a 5-point checklist for CISOs to get better aligned to the business. And the notes that I took were twofold. There wasn't one piece in here that talked about having conversations with the board or the CEO about strategic business goals and aligning security to it. And there wasn't a bullet point in here about how to manage risk appetite, or anything like that. So they're missing massive pieces in here. Yeah, I get it. CISOs should try to ease governance-related friction because we're looked at as the Department of No. But Jesus, how are we going to know unless we're aligned to the business goals, unless we know what's happening in that boardroom unless we know the risk appetite of the business, right?
We talk about it all the time, and this is one of my like really hot button items. I think you guys have heard me bring it up. Geez, almost on every discussion we've had is CEO alignment, right? Culture, and the assumption that the CISO is going to be able to push culture up, just doesn't mesh. It's got to be a CEO and board level thing down in alignment with the CISO to understand, like conjunctively, what are we trying to do here, right? Like to that, like ready, fire, aim thing. Yep. If you don't know where you're going, how do you ever get there? You're always going to be off. You're always going to be missed. Right. And then the board and the C-suite is asking the CISO, like, why did we miss this? Like, why are we here? Like, because this is where you led us, right? I mean, it shouldn't come as a surprise.
No, agreed. And to be honest with you, I think that this article leads into some of why article number 2 is taking off. 100%.
Exactly. This is why vCISOs are in high demand, because CISOs are getting out because of this misalignment and not having cultural alignment with the CEO, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's another piece of it too. I mean, there is a level of, it's funny because I worked in the government, right? And when you work in the government and you're trying to influence upstream, the first thing you do is you bring in a consultant. So it's not you telling, right, a city council or legislators or anything like that there's something wrong. You bring in a third party because the third party wields power in multiple ways. Number one, they're a known consultative person and they're not part of the organization that could be seen as, just wanting to move the needle forward for the organization. And secondly, they're not cheap. So the first thing the CEO and the CFO is going to do is, what did we get for our money? Right? So they're going to yield that level of influence on both of those factors. That's part of it too.
Yeah, it happens on the enterprise side too. And it's kind of a shame, right? Because I see a lot of companies, and I've seen this in my personal past, like you have to spend a significant amount of money with a consultant to tell the business what you could have told them for free in far less time. Right. More efficiently and gotten it done. But they just don't want to, there's that lack of trust, the lack of belief for whatever reason. It's a disconnect. And so, it's really hard. I think I'm interested in your guys' perspective on the vCISO. Yeah, the vCISOs are hot right now. I think it's something that's emerging. It's been going on for a little while now, but I'm not really sure that I believe in it, right? Like where it's mainly aligned. I think people are starting to look at this from mid-market and up. And I see it, I really see it on this small, where they just don't have the investment to make, right? Where it's hard to get somebody on full time. They need somebody more of that part-time consultative nature. But look, I've seen this from security startups when they've looked at, hey, should we do a vCISO? And it's like, you're a security startup. Like you shouldn't, this shouldn't be something you're focusing. This should be in your wheelhouse, right? Like, yes, I know you can't do it all, but it breeds a little bit of distrust in me as a enterprise CISO looking at it and saying, is this company really taking this seriously, right? If it should be something that they're handling internally, because I just don't know, like we talked about all these disconnects from the CISO level and the wrong culture. Does the vCISO in that environment get you any closer to that? I think it moves you further away.
Yeah. I'm going to say this. We're going to cover the security product side of the CISO discussion in another article in a second.
Right.
But I think vCISOs can be effective at the mid-market and down.
Yeah.
Right?
I 100% agree. I don't see much of a place at the enterprise side. Where I've seen a little bit of traction is more on the specialized pieces of it, where, they're called a vCISO, but they're coming in for maybe like a certain regulatory or compliance need. And
consultant, like you're trying to get FedRAMP certified and you need some specific guidance there. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I see it on the enterprise side there. But yes, mid-market, even a little bit on the emerging enterprise side, but mid-market down 100%.
So even on mid-market though, like where do you classify mid-market? Like at 1,500, 2,000 employees, that's kind of mid-market-ish. And I think like you're getting into the size where you should really be making the investment and make sure it's in aligned with your cultural outcome. Like,
I mean, some of the times I've seen that vCISO be the dip your toes in the water and get the program off the ground and then hire in a CISO. Right.
If that's your alignment to get there, I could see that.
And see, here's the dichotomy that I have. I would rather see a vCISO embedded in an organization to start to influence and make traction than them do nothing. Because that's typically the other option, is that they're not going to hire an FTE the majority of the times because it's the budget constraints that they have, right? It's not being able to bring in another FTE, and they'd rather bring in a billable FTE.
Yeah, but the outcome of that is it's usually a compliance activity, right, Jason? Like,
sure, exactly. Checking the box.
It could be, but I could see an effective use of a vCISO for a smaller public, not as mature company that needs to do something. The CFO owns it, needs some expertise to get the program off the ground, to figure out what they're going to hire. Maybe not a vCISO, maybe just a VP or a director of security. I think that could bridge a gap, right? In that's not necessarily mid-market per se, because that's a Russell 3000 type company, which means they're usually still pretty big, right? But because maybe they're not highly regulated, don't have a lot of expertise here, leverage a vCISO, bring them in, decide what you're going to hire. Do you need a dedicated CISO, or are you just going to hire somebody or a CFO to manage your risk profile, right?
No, 100% agreed. But again, I would rather see a vCISO embedded in an organization than that organization have nothing.
Yeah, true.
And so many times, mid-market and down, they're not going to have anything. It's going to be your IT team playing security professional.
Yep.
Yeah,
now,
and I go ahead.
No, I was just
going to say on the vCISO side, I question, like, what is a vCISO, right? Like, is it somebody that's got CISO experience and a successful track record and background? Because I do see a lot of people entering this market trying to play as a vCISO, and they don't really have practical experience.
No, I you know what? I agree with you 100% too. And it's funny, I joke with the team and I call them like the Walmarts of cybersecurity. They're trying to get in on the cheap. They're trying to get embedded within your company, but they're not bringing the value because everything you're getting is cheap, right? So it's like, yes, you have to be careful. You have to vet out the talent, vet out the experience. Let me tell you, if you go into a consulting organization and you're hiring a vCISO and they're not showing you resumes, they're not showing you background, they're not having that person sit down at the table with your CEO or your board of directors, dump that right away. Dump the proposal right away because you don't want to be going there.
Yeah, I see this more as a fractional CISO capability where you don't want to hire full-time, but you need some expertise. And what I've primarily seen is don't go to the firms trying to pitch a bunch of people. Like there's a number of former CISOs that are doing this as their main gig now. And they obviously have the expertise and they definitely can go in and help, but they also realize you only need me, 40 hours a month instead of 160, right? And so I think of it more as a fractional.
And in that line of thinking, like there's been this kind of movement, the professional association, the CISOs and stuff, not really related to vCISO, but I'm going to tie it together. I do see potentially this specialty, this market coming together in the way lawyers do, right? Like to be essentially have a group of professionals who have founded this service, right? Where you're going and there's 5 CISOs that work together, right? And you can get that fractional time needed. And even if you had a good CISO, maybe you don't have the really good expertise on identity or AI, right? And so you go and you outsource that specific component to up-level your internal capacity and maybe get you to a point where you can take it over internally. That I think has teeth. I just don't think we're there yet when we've seen a lot of that happening. It's a CISO who's hung their shingle, right?
Yeah, no, I have seen that, Ben. And they're part of a larger firm that does other things, but it's like their vCISO firm. And the ones that I've seen that are really good almost treat it like a fusion team. And they have they have a CISOs who have been in healthcare, CISOs who have been in other verticals, and they have this like fusion team. So, if you're an organization who needs additional talent, right away they can bring in another one of those vCISOs to kind of augment the need in the moment. To bring in that expertise when you need it. So it works out really well.
Yeah. We see this in finance too, kind of virtual CFOs kind of thing.
Yep,
yeah.
exactly.
The model can work here, I think, for, again, the right organization for the right use case. All right. Now, think being a CISO of a cybersecurity vendor is easy? Think again. So this is the CISO on the cybersecurity side, Ben, that you were talking about. That's why I said we're going to cover it in a few seconds. And you have a lot of experience on this side, so I'll let you start.
Yeah, look, it can be a hard role for a couple reasons, right? Like one, you're coming in an area of domain expertise to a company that is in that domain of expertise. And so it's almost like in a lot of instances, there's almost a challenge from the get-go of like, how do I convince these people that this is the right thing to do? Because they all have their own agendas of what they think is the right thing to do, right? And the perception of some expertise. What I found for vendors generally is, and this isn't limited to just one or two vendors, this is pretty systemic. The people, especially in the startups, think because they're security founders, and some people have been prior CISOs, some people came from another vendor and started out. They think that they know security when what they really know is their specialty and the product that they're producing.
Mm-hmm.
And being a CISO at an enterprise company is really a lot more of a business and a program management function.
Right.
And so how you run the business of security is different than how you build an IDS, right? Or a vulnerability scanner or something else. And you may do that really, really well, but totally not understand, I want to go get FedRAMP certification. How does the compliance look like for FedRAMP certification? And so, those two dynamics, one, kind of competing against everybody to because you're the CISO, but you're fighting everybody for their vision of security, and then trying to run a good program and people saying, oh, we don't need to invest money in that because they don't really understand what the program looks like. Those two things can make it really, really challenging. And again, this is one of the little known things is if you're an enterprise CISO, I would really look at the third party risk of my security vendors and take that seriously. Like it's not always what you think it is or what you would assume. Yeah.
And Ben, to be honest with you, I know you spend a lot of time on the product side. I've always been, executive leadership in consulting, IT consulting, cybersecurity consulting. You're offering a product of software. We're offering a product of people and data. Yeah. So it's very similar, right? Yeah. But the one thing that you have is that you need to make sure that the product you represent is secure and trusted. So you have the ultimate DevSecOps responsibilities on your side because you're putting a product in the world. And that product is a security product that's going to get beat to hell by every malactor on the face of this earth or people who just want to do bug bounty.
and the blowback, right? If you're the CISO of a company, right? Like, so look at Tim Brown, right? Tim Brown, SolarWinds, not really a security company, more network management, but I think it's a good representation. Like, I think he took a lot of heat. Like, Tim had a heart attack. Like, that wasn't fair to Tim, like all that stuff. Now, I'm not going to argue the specifics of the case and whether it was valid or not valid. Like, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, look, you had a nation state go after that, right? Because they want to get persistence in their customers. He probably didn't have all the budget he wanted. He didn't have all the resources he wanted. And he took it, I think, he's come out well on the other side. But you can imagine how it could have gone really poorly of like, you're the CISO for this security company. Why didn't you do the right thing? And like your professional 100%. Life can be in jeopardy if it's not done right. And so that's again, one of the challenges there.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely right. I mean, I sit back and think about the amount of client data, that I'm responsible for and my team's responsible for. And, the amount of implementations and consulting and those type of things that, it's just, there's so much liability. But, I sat back and I thought about it and I'm like, at the end of the day, highly skilled security leadership is highly skilled security leadership. And if I went to go work for a product company, I'd bring that same mentality, right? That same diligence to the product company. If I went and I worked in healthcare, I would still treat all of those assets the same, just as important, the same level of urgency, and put everything I had in it. So a lot of it, I think, Ben, is, you have an incredible leadership style and skill, and you would bring that style and skill no matter where you went.
Yes, that is true. But again, like I think a lot of people also forget security vendors are often smaller startups, right? For the majority of them, there are some large ones out there, but like most of them are smaller companies, right? And so, if you're a 100-person company, what's the investment you actually have to spend on securing the enterprise combined with the chip on your shoulder of, hey, we think we know what we're doing. Like that can lead to some disaster. So no matter how good you are as a security leader, right? But you're right. Like hire the right guy, hire good talent, put 100%. A good program in place. Culture.
I mean,
Culture.
and Ben, there's challenges at the enterprise, there's
Oh my
challenges
God,
at the
yeah.
mid-market,
Yeah.
and there's challenges at the, at the startup level. It's just pick your poison and then go run after it, right? That's it.
Yeah. Know what type of CISO you are.
Yep.
Make sure you're able to get the job done and live with yourself at the end of the day. Yeah.
You got it.
And identify the signs that your organizational culture is hurting your
Look
cybersecurity.
at that lead in. Woo! I love it.
Because part of that you just talked about, Ben, is the culture, right? I'm a founder from the security space, building a security product. I know how to secure the environment, but maybe that's not true. That's a culture thing.
It is. It really is. Yeah.
Right? Right out of the gate.
That's a challenge. Like the culture is so we've talked about it a lot in this episode, but we talk about it all the time. It's so important. It just really is. Like there's a through line that runs through so many pieces of that. They talk about high turnover, burnout, blame environments like that. I've seen a lot of that in the security world where it's very, you're the reason why this happened, when it's really everybody's fault that it happened in a way. We're people at the end of the day, and our teams are people, and like not doing this the right way. Like if you have a bad culture going into this, you can hire all the right talent and you can see them all leave in 6 months, 9 months because they're just tired of it and they don't want to deal with it. Right. People want to be respected. They want to feel like they're valuable. And if they're not, they leave.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about security being treated as a check in the box. Well, security being treated as a check in the box has a trickle down effect. And that trickle down effect lands on the people who support that program. And if the people who support that program don't feel like they're believed in, they don't feel like they're trusted, they don't feel like they're valuable, you're making them feel like they only have to be there because they have to be there to check a box. That is going to make them unengaged. That's going to make them complacent. Worst case scenario, burnt out. But do you really want a cybersecurity professional who's complacent and unengaged? I don't.
Yeah.
That's not a cybersecurity team I want, because at the end of the day, they're going to miss things. They're going to care less. Things are going to get through. That's not the team I want.
Right. Yeah. And that's the challenge. If you don't have the culture from the top, it's going to be very difficult to motivate those employees to do the right thing and to do their job and love their job and want to stay in their job.
And the other thing that I found too that is super important, but often gets overlooked in cut, training and education. We're cybersecurity professionals. It happens a lot in IT professionals. If I'm not constantly learning, I realize based on being a professional in this industry that I'm not going to last much longer in this industry. I'm going to start falling behind the 8 ball. And once my skills are depleted, I'm no longer valuable to the workplace, any workplace.
And that's the first bucket to get cut.
It is always. And that's why I'm saying, like, as a CISO, hoard it, protect it, put whatever you can in front of your training budget, save it, give something else up. Because once you lose your people and their skill sets and their feeling of being valued and educated and knowledgeable, game over. It's game over, right? Because this type of workforce is the constantly learning workforce. That's how they thrive. And you're pulling that away. You're pulling one of the most important pieces away from those staff. So guard it with everything you have.
Tie in perfectly to Article 6. Cybersecurity professionals continue to command high salaries, but there are rising concerns over career growth, workplace flexibility, and retention. Yeah. The point you just brought up, right?
Yeah, I mean, it totally reinforces what we were just talking about, that folks want to be constantly learning. Now, I can see in some organizations career advancement. I mean, a lot of organizations don't even have security teams, never mind large security teams. So your option for advancement could be limited.
Yeah.
But if you continue training, they continue learning, you continue growing them, they'll be happy. They'll feel engaged. They'll feel part of the organization, and so many times I've seen folks say, I love the culture. I could go get a job, for a different salary somewhere else, but I want to stay here because the culture's great. You support me, you're training me, you're doing all these things, and I'm going to stick it out. And then at the end of it, it's important to be competitive, not just the salary side. Benefits matter.
I
Culture
think
matters.
people
Training
point to
matters.
salary, right? Like people always say, and I've
Mhm.
seen this from other areas of the organization. I've seen it from HR, where HR comes back and says, "Why are you people unhappy? Like they're some of the highest paid, you know, job grade wise compared to other areas of the organization." It's like it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
like yes,
Yeah.
everybody wants to get a good salary, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, if you're going to work and you don't like it, you hate it, like you're just
Yeah.
miserable because you are the checkbox.
Yep.
That's not gonna work, right? I
Right.
think there's been a lot of discussion the Jamie Dimon call, right, where he basically said everybody's going back into work, right? Like I don't care, you people are lazy, you're not doing anything. You've seen the pushback in the government side right now,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
The give me 5 bullet points about what you've done. Like, look, there's waste everywhere, right? But at the end of the day, if you treat people like that,
Yeah.
they're not going to hang around. And even if they do, you're not going to have great output from them. You're not going to be
No,
getting what you
definitely not.
need to get the mission done.
Nope. They're there for a paycheck, not to move the business forward at the end of it, right?
Yeah. In this article, in the kind of towards the bottom, it says, while salaries remain high, compensation alone is not enough to keep cybersecurity professionals engaged.
Right.
Many respondents cited a lack of career development and leadership opportunities as the primary reason for job dissatisfaction.
Yeah. And
There it
you know
is.
what? I mean, as a leader, if you're going to know your constraints, whether it's budgetary, being able to bring in new FTEs, whatever the case, you're going to know your constraints. Think outside the box. You know, I've talked to folks and said, listen, you know, I know you're interested in, you know, you're a cybersecurity professional, but I know you're interested in finance. What if you become the liaison to finance? What if you work with the CFO? What if you become so knowledgeable in our finance data, information, the team, their process, and just start really, you know, getting them exposure in other places to be able to keep those gears spinning? It's worth a lot. It really, really is. And all you have to do is go have a conversation with the CFO and say, hey, listen, I have an idea. Right.
And I think also the interesting thing about that, Jason, is that's not just helping that IC who reports to you, right?
Right.
It's also helping you. Like one,
Yeah.
you're going to get better retention, but the bigger payoff many people don't see is if your CFO seems that somebody on the security team is actually interested in what they do, takes an interest, is committed, is putting the time in, like they're going to see that you're actually doing the work, and it's going to pay off huge dividends outside of the minor dividend of, yeah, you're going to keep that employee around a little longer.
100%. It's a chess move at the end of the day. That's
Yeah.
a chess move, right? Now you have somebody from your team embedded into that business unit, building relationships in that business unit, building influence within that business unit, bringing you back intelligence and information. And it's a win-win all the way around. But so many organizations don't think of that. So many leaders don't think about, you know, think outside the box and embed somebody within a business unit.
Yep. There's one other point in this article I'm going to use to tie into Ira Winkler's LinkedIn post. The report also emphasized the role of IT backgrounds in cybersecurity hiring. More than 70% of security engineers and more than 50% of security analysts and security architects said their IT experience was critical in securing their roles. So if we flip over to the Ira Winkler, which I'll have to add to the show notes after this, Ira puts a post out there earlier today, about 5 hours ago or so, about there are plenty of entry-level cybersecurity jobs. Yes, I write that, and it is very true. But how do you get them? And he goes into this and kind of some of the challenges around all these people saying all you need is a certification and you're going to walk in and get a cybersecurity job. And he's like, that's not how you get your first role.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Your entry level into cybersecurity is programming, networking, administration, help. That it's IT in most cases is how you get in.
Yeah, like it's the same as saying there isn't an entry level F1 driver job. There's an entry level car, but nobody's going to put you in an F1 car, right? And like, look, maybe that's a bit extreme, but to the point, like you've got to have some foundational experience because you can't just start out running a SOC incident. Like, what would all your context be for what's going on in the incident? How would you know, right? It's something abnormal. How do you know? Like, so it's really, really rare, like to do that. I always look for somebody that's came out of IT, came out of help desk. In certain cases, I've actually looked for people that come completely out of it, like maybe psychology, right? Or on the finance side, if I'm looking for like a chief of staff, right, can be helpful. But you've got to have some experience. That's why the FBI doesn't hire generally people right out of college. They want you to have some life experience and then take that into the FBI to start a track right, of investigatory experience in your role, right? You're not going to start out with nothing. And so that I think Ira pointed it out perfectly. And those are really good entry level cyber roles that he lists on here.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and again, I don't want to, just pull at straws here. I think you could bring in some outside of IT as well, because I know an incredible person who's in cybersecurity right now, who started off as a CPA. They started off as a CPA. They did some audit work. They started working in SOC 2 work. Guess what? Now they're in the industry.
Yeah.
So I think there's some nuance to this, but I 100% agree with Ira that you're not getting a certification. You're not, going to get this. This is why I always been an evangelist for really strong internship programs. And you guys know this. You've heard me say this. Some of the best staff I've ever hired started as interns because they were paid interns. They got the job experience. It was very, very extremely entry level.
Right? And don't fall into the trap of somebody telling you, hey, go get this certification and it'll be your entry point into it. Like, I can't tell you, I don't really look at certifications on a resume. Like, I somewhat don't care. Like, it's interesting, but it's not important, right? Like, I would rather you have fundamental experience and show me that experience in your resume and when we talk, than you say you have a CISSP. If I just want CISSPs, I can go hire a bunch of sales guys that have CISSPs. They don't know what the hell they're doing.
Right. And so Ira does talk about project management, compliance, audit, et cetera. And that's kind of that use case. See, I started on the project management side.
Yeah.
I've spent 7.5 years in nuclear power working for the computer support unit more as a project management resource, right? I was managing the projects of upgrading the plant computer systems. I wasn't a hardcore security guy back then. I was a project manager. And then I went into consulting on the security side and really kind of endpoint and networking and then compliance. Like there's a lot of different paths, but I think I've seen this too, by the way. There's a lot of programs out there, and I see this for the military folks too. So word of caution, military folks. I see these programs where they're like, you just come in, you go through this certification program, there's jobs on the other side. It doesn't work that way. Like I get that there's some transition of skill sets and those programs can help figure out how to leverage your military experience towards those. But there's no guaranteed job at the end of those programs, which I think they like to tout, but they don't have the connections. They're not working on internship programs. They're basically getting you through and giving you a certification 100%. And they think that's enough.
And at the end of the day, that same military person without the certification would still get a seat at the table as an internship as long as they qualified and had the right background, right? I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. Then you can let the organization that hires you talk to you about putting you on a path, right? And have them invest. So that's the path. But yeah, no, I'm looking. I see the list now that Ira put in here. Yeah, dead on. Compliance, audit, project management, system analyst, help desk administration. Yeah, dead on. Absolutely.
Yeah. Those are the entry-level cybersecurity jobs. It's going to be very hard for you to walk in because the entry level in cybersecurity is really kind of a security analyst, isn't it? Like you're tier 1 SOC support. Here you go. But you've got to understand how networks and systems work. You just do. You're not going to walk into that environment after a 4-year degree in cybersecurity and know exactly what that looks like.
I think you have to look at what job track you're trying to go after, right? It's just like what type of CISO do you want to be? If you want to go into more of the operations and you're going to be a SOC analyst, that's most likely your entry point. Yeah, you're going to need networking, help desk, systems, some type of IT background. If you want to go into GRC, or for whatever reason, if that floats your boat, it's not really my favorite. But like if you like the documentation and stuff, you come in from auditing. You can come in from the finance side or something, right? There's other things, but you have to demonstrate the connection between what you know and what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Agreed, 100%. All right, last article. And I teed this one up for Jason. Servant leadership, putting trust at the center.
Yeah. I mean, this is how I've been operating forever, right? I mean, this is the leadership style that I learned in the military. At the end of the day, I'm here to serve my troops. I'm here to serve the folks who are in my battalion, in my platoon. And it's the way that's been my leadership style since inception. And for me, it's about building trust, building strength through trust, having the empathy for everybody around you. And at the end of it, it builds extremely strong relationships. Because when you're standing next to someone, they're going to have your back and the other way around too.
Yes.
And for me, that is the root of the strongest relationships I've ever felt, ever been in. It's trust. 100% trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
like
agreed.
that's what my entire network is found. It's trusting and helping and giving help when I don't know if I can help, but I'll do whatever I can. Like if anybody who knows, come to me on LinkedIn. You need some help. Like I'm gonna try. I may not succeed, but I'm gonna try. Darn it, because you're part of my network. You're part of that core group of people that we've worked together. We built trust together. Of course, I'll do whatever I can to help you.
And here's the thing, though. I truly feel that is the hardest leadership philosophy that's out there. And here's why. Number one, you have to be uber transparent.
Yeah.
Secondly, you have to be insanely vulnerable. Right? You just have to be. You have to be able to admit when you can't do something because you're going to bring in the folks who know how to do it for you and with you. You have to be accountable, which is massive, because to be vulnerable, you need a level of accountability. You need to own it all day long. And then a lot of times what egos don't allow to happen is listening. Right? Once you get in a leadership position, so many times ego gets in the way. When you're a servant leader, that ego goes in the closet. It's gone. It's going to disappear. Has to.
Yeah.
Right? So if the ego gets in the way, you're not going to be a listener. You're just going to be telling, commanding from upon high.
I did an interview segment with Tony Bradley on Friday. I worked with Tony a few different times, and we were talking about aspects of leadership. And one of the ones that's in this article that you didn't mention was what they call the ethical practices, what I call the moral compass, right?
Yep.
The other thing that's important is kind of that moral compass. And what we were talking about was when you have to make decisions like layoffs and that kind of stuff, right? They're rough. They're rough on everybody. Mm-hmm. They take a toll on me every time I have to do them. They are never fun, like never, because I do care about my fellow employees and because of my ethical background and my moral compass. Like I don't take it lightly. And it's just another element that they bring out in this article that I think is very important for great leaders too.
Yeah. It's funny. You kind of just, you put me in the hot tub time machine for a hot minute, and I'm kind of thinking back at times in my life when I'd have to go through a riff. Right. Mm-hmm. And, so many leaders, I watched so many leaders send in their managers to go sit in there with HR and do the deed. And I couldn't do that. My ass was in there, sitting there doing the deed. Me. Right. No matter what level, no matter where in the org chart you landed, I was in there for every single one of them. That sucks. That sucks. So you want to know what? Ultimately, I'm accountable, I'm responsible, and I own this thing. So it's me. It's got to be.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for riffing with me today. We're just, we get 7-8 articles under us, man. We'll just go. I love it.
So good on the fly. We're so good on the fly.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week, hopefully with an interview on Business Security Weekly.